if you've put your money into metals or any other asset, quote unquote, over any period of time, you've probably heard the phrase flight to safety. Now, you usually hear this with regard to stocks, things like that, maybe even crypto, quote unquote. But what does it even mean? What is the flight to safety? Really, like, what does it entail? Because for a stacker, I mean, what's safer than having gold and silver, right? It's going to protect you in the SHTF. It's going to protect you from inflation. It's going to do all of these other things. So isn't this the safest place to be? Maybe, maybe not. That's for you to decide. But really think about what the flight to safety is. With regard to things like stocks, other things like that, really what it means is that you're going to quality. You're going from things that may be more speculative, like, growth stocks or, whatever, weed stocks or something crazy, into your more mainstream, safer investments. Typically, there are also defensive sectors of stocks and things like that you can go to, which would be considered a flight to safety. But what's the ultimate flight to safety for the normal person? Cash. Good old dollar. Good old greenback. But for a stacker, I mean, that's the ultimate heresy, right? That's the ultimate evil, to look at the dollar or any currency as being the flight to safety. How are you safe in a debt instrument, in something with no intrinsic value? That's the world that we live in. Realistically, like it or not, that is the world that we live in. And you have to operate by the rules that are given to you. You can't just reinvent the game. Unless, again, you're that powerful and that rich, maybe you stand a chance. Now, gold and silver. Is it a flight to safety? If you're putting your money in gold and silver, is it a safe place to be? No. Spot price moves just like any other asset. The stock market, last year obviously gained a lot of attention for the moves that it made. But gold and silver lost just as much as the stock market at times. What does that say about the flight to safety of being in metals? Well, we're talking about a longer period of time. No. Had the pandemic not come along, gold and silver really weren't doing much of anything for the last 10 years before the pandemic. The pandemic gave a reason for all commodities, all assets to basically jump up. You hear this common refrain in the stocking community that, I'm double on my stock. I'm up 30%. Yes, post 2020 you are. But before that you weren't. And really, people weren't talking about explosive gains, in the stocking community before that. What they were talking about was collecting or, gaining weight or things like that. There was that inkling of like, it'll skyrocket just like it is now. It's going to 50, it's going to 100, blah, blah, blah. But that's going to be around, and it's been around for ages. The interesting part is when you really dial it down into what is the value of stocking, it really just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. And is there a flight to safety in, metals in general? I would say if you're a stacker and you look at your stack as, a diverse investment or a diverse asset, there's no one type of silver. You'll ask a lot of stackers and they'll say silver is silver. That's true in a very general sense, but it's not true really when you look at your stack. A Kookaburra is not worth the same as a generic round. An Eagle is not worth the same as a maple. They're all different. They may have the same metals content, which has, an arbitrary value assigned to it with spot and futures, but it's not the same. So are certain silver coins, rounds, things like that safer than others? Maybe. I mean, universally, the most recognized is the American Eagle, right? But is it worth paying the premium for? No, not in my opinion. I mean, that's up to you, but I surely would not pay for regular bullion Eagles. There's no reason. I can get cheaper, quote unquote, finer, more purity, like 4 nines versus a 3 nines, bullion. Why would I want 3 nines when I can get 4 and, an ounce is an ounce? That's a question for someone else. But again, within the stocking community, within silver, within gold, is there a difference? Is there a safety play there? I would say yes, and it's probably not what you think. It's probably more the numismatics and the really more rare collectibles that are just not going anywhere, that will have demand. Now, does that mean it's safe? Absolutely not. Just like anything else. Anything else that's not cash, and again, cash has its own risks, but anything else that's not cash has its definite downside. So the risk with something like numismatics or things like that is, if there was an SHTF, your numismatic is worth the same as a bullion round. Doesn't matter if it's the finest coin. Now, would a market possibly develop in the future after the real SHTF to, regain that value? Probably. Someone's going to have value. That's the part too that people don't understand about like the SHTF. Yes, it would be chaos, and yes, most of us would get tapped out in the early days of a real SHTF. But the reality is that human nature, there will be the haves and the have-nots. The haves are going to want to diversify what it is that they have in terms of importance. And so over time, things like gold and silver may end up having more value than they do in the beginning. Do I think it's a transactional currency? No, I don't think it'll ever become that again, because people don't understand its value. The general public has no concept of what metals are worth, and they won't, no matter how much you educate them. As we've seen, the society in general just tends to get dumber as time goes on. I mean, realistically, that's just how it is. They gain all kinds of knowledge, but it's not useful knowledge. It's random, useless garbage. Stackers, again, they're gonna try to force their will of like, hey, this is metals, go read the Bible, it says silver and gold. No one's gonna care in the SHTF. They're gonna want to ask if they can eat your metals. No, you can't. Is it a transactional medium? No, because again, really, if you put in years of your life on the front end for your stack, and you have to trade 20 rounds to get a loaf of bread, are you really gonna do that? Probably not. Probably not. You're going to try to hold out to find that other stacker that you saw on YouTube. It's not going to happen. So is gold and silver a flight to safety? Realistically, no. But if you had to decide, what the safety play would be in gold and silver within that asset class, I'd say it's probably in collectibles and numismatics. Even though there's a lot of risk to the downside there, it's probably your best play, given the status quo, if everything stays the same, to really retain that value.